one day before National Signing Day, and Jim Harbaugh still doesn't have a contract extension. Is he fully committed or on his way to the Lions? Chris Speilman and Barry Sanders are back with the Lions. So what are they doing, and will it make a difference? And Tigers manager AJ Hinch reveals his top 3 starting pitchers for 2020. Who's on the list, and is it surprising? Dennis and Brian break it down. Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 62. And Dennis, we start off with some breaking news before we even get to our first chapter, before we even get to the book. Take a look at this. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, aka Big Gretch, as you can see, I put it up on Twitter for everyone to see, following Penn State's 39-25 win over Michigan State, changed the state flag to the Penn State flag, saying PSU beat Michigan and my Spartans. They own our state, period. Heck of a move by Gretchen Whitmer, but she knows who owns the state, and it's the Penn State Nittany Lions. That's all you can say about it.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the great philosopher who today said, unity in unity, there's strength. You know who said that?
No.
Chris Speilman, part of the Detroit Lions organization. See if that ends up coming to fruition there for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll be talking about that during the course of our show today. Chris Speilman being acquired by the Lions for the second time in his career. This time, not quite in a Joe Dumars-like role, but almost. And perhaps he can. Joe Dumars led the Pistons to 3 championships, 2 as a player and 1 as the general manager. Maybe Chris Speilman can lead the Lions to their second playoff win in the last 63 years.
You know what? He's got a pretty good chance. He's got a. You know what? You can fumble around with your words when you start trying to say nice things about the Lions, which I plan on doing tonight.
That's right. All right, well, definitely want to thank everybody out there for tuning in to episode number 62, where we will attempt to not fumble the ball. It's going to be 5 more fantastic chapters, and for those of you that are watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook Live and on Twitch, thank you. Also to those listening to the podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you're interested in the podcast, that is available at around 10:30 or 11 on the day of each show. Make sure that you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you participate in each show by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live and via YouTube during the course of the show. Dennis will be reading it, so make sure you put it in. Let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, you can see that Penn State did silence Michigan State in that second half, did come away with that convincing victory, and according to my Twitter feed, Big Gretch changed the state flag because of it. Now we look forward to what Michigan State can do if they play Maryland this weekend. In the third chapter, Matthew Stafford got hurt and had to leave. The same old Lions loss against the Packers. What's up with him? And can Chris Speilman turn the Lions around to get them another playoff win sometime in the next decade or so? In the fourth chapter, it's the end of an era. The LiAngelo Ball era in Detroit is over, and he didn't even play 1 minute. We'll tell you what we think about that, as well as what transpired in the first 2 preseason games for the Pistons. And after the major wager in the 5th chapter, AJ Hinch making some interesting comments about the Detroit Tigers starting rotation. We'll share with you what he had to say earlier this week about the Tigers' potential starting 5. in terms of their pitching staff. But, Dennis, we're going to start off as usual with the first chapter. That takes us to J.I. Block M. Harbaugh. After losing to Penn State a few weeks ago, it just seems like he and his program lost the will to play. They waved the white flag against Maryland. They waved the white flag against the Deep South Buckeyes. Then they had a practice on Sunday and said, no, let's just wave the white flag on Iowa. They've got high COVID numbers, I guess. And I think they're the only program in the Big Ten that has had COVID-19 numbers too high to play for 3 consecutive weeks. And so they're done for the season unless they make a bowl game. But I don't think they're going to go to a bowl game at 2-4. But just after losing to 0-5 Penn State, they lost their will to play last week. Harbaugh and A.D. Ward Manuel said they're going to wait until after the season to work out a contract extension. Well, after the season is now because they're not playing anymore. And considering they have National Signing Day coming up tomorrow, it's imperative that they get a deal done. Yesterday, when Jim Harbaugh was asked if his contract situation comes up in conversations with recruits, Harbaugh said, quote, yeah, that question does come up, and I tell him my plan is committed to Michigan, have been, am, and will remain. As far as the contract, Ward and I will talk at the end of the season on the current contract. That's the truth. That's where it stands, end quote. But obviously a plan is different than a signed contract. Now, we've also got a Lions issue regarding Harbaugh to get to in just a minute. But, Dennis, what do you make of the season ending and Harbaugh still not having a contract extension signed with less than 24 hours until National Signing Day?
Well, with Michigan not playing, they said that they would be without 50 players. And, well, that wasn't a red. I'll buy that they're looking out for the best interest of the football team. They could say the same thing against Ohio State, could have said the same thing against Maryland. Other teams did the same thing, looking out for their own best interest when they folded up some games. And, if you're Michigan and, it's not complete transparency, you got to, put up with guys like Herbstreit and Chapman taking shots at you. And, you kind of deserve it this year. So that's where it's at. It can be seem a little weak and non-professional when it comes down to talking about health and safety of the players and talking about them being cowards and losing the will, but that's what you sign up for when you wanted to play in a COVID season. So there it is. As far as Harbaugh, this is a situation where he has clearly put himself in front of the Michigan football program, and that sucks. I mean, if you're a Michigan fan, having your coach put himself in front of the program. Ward Manuel is putting finances in front of the Michigan football program. So, the Michigan football program right now is fallen to rock bottom. A Michigan man has put himself in front of the program to try to get an NFL job and get out of town. And the AD, instead of firing him, saying, hey, maybe we can get this $10 million signing day. Hopefully these guys, we can lie to them and, they'll sign on the dotted line and then they're stuck with us. And then, if Jim can't get an NFL job, he'll come back with his tail between his legs and he'll fire his whole staff and then we'll get into an off season of excitement. So not a lot of fun around Ann Arbor. Who knows? But you know what? If they get through tomorrow and they're able to somehow patch things up and not have a mass exodus where players are calling them out, we know you're not going to be here. See ya. Then that'll be a surprise. But the one thing we've seen it before we saw with Mark D'Antonio. This guy's green and white through and through. Except when he's ready to retire, he's going to lie to the recruits and sit around for an extra couple million, and then just pull the chute and get out of there. I saw it back in the day with Lloyd Carr. Mm-hmm. Fine man, but since he didn't get to pick his successor, he pretty much sabotaged the next coach in Rich Rodriguez. You know what? I've never had millions of dollars and the power that comes with being a coach, but love of university, it's just the love of green and the love of that power, and you put yourself in front of the team that you say you love. And that's what's going on in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. In Ann Arbor with regards to Harbaugh's contract situation and National Signing Day. If National Signing Day wasn't for another month or if this was a non-coronavirus season and the season ended, 2 days after Thanksgiving, then they'd have plenty of time to negotiate this contract before National Signing Day. But obviously that didn't take place this time. And I don't know if they were waiting to see if Michigan would add a couple of victories. Obviously they couldn't because they didn't play any games due to coronavirus or waving the white flag or whatever you want to call it. And so there hasn't been any practices, or except for the one they had on Sunday. They haven't been playing any games, and there haven't been any negotiations, according to Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh. It just leaves everybody in a weird situation. They've had this window where they've had nothing to do, and they have decided not to sign Harbaugh to an extension, or maybe they want to, but Harbaugh doesn't want to. Who knows? We just know that there isn't an extension, and Harbaugh is still the only coach in the Power Five that doesn't have a contract extension or doesn't have a contract beyond the year 2021. I think that there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on Ann Arbor tomorrow for a lot of reasons. First of all, people are going to see if Harbaugh signs an extension before, 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. when the first faxes can come in. Whenever it is, I think that there's going to be a lot of eyeballs seeing if...
7, I think. I think 7 o'clock.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of folks are going to be looking to see if Harbaugh has his contract signed in the next 11 hours before National Signing Day letters of intent can be sent in. If not, perhaps at 7:01 when the first letters of intent can come in, there won't be any. Perhaps they won't get there first until like 8 or 9 a.m. and they might be sitting around thinking, wow, how come we've got like 18 commits but only 5 have sent in their letters, or only 12 have sent in their letters? There's going to be a lot of questions early on about who's sending them in, when they're sending them in. Obviously, they have a couple of players from California that you wouldn't expect to have theirs in right away, but they could flip during the day. They could delay. If I was one of these recruits, I would not be in a rush to send in my letter of intent. There's obviously the second National Signing Day that comes up in February. If you still want to go to Michigan because you like where the program is headed, because they either kept Harbaugh or they got rid of Harbaugh and you like the new coach, or Harbaugh got rid of the assistant coach that you really liked, but he hired somebody else that you really liked, then you can decide to come back. But I mean, you want to talk about a situation that could get really ugly if Jim Harbaugh is lying to your face saying, I'm going to be back, and then he goes to the NFL 2 days from now or 2 months from now, or he says, yeah, my coaches are going to stay, and then the position coach and coordinator that you really like that recruited you are both out a couple of days later when he signs his contract extension. You're going to be furious. So this is something that Michigan and Harbaugh brought upon themselves and is not looking good right now. I would expect a lot of drama tomorrow.
Yeah, I would too. You know, the one thing we don't know is we don't know if he is lying, because he might come back.
Correct.
If there's an NFL team that doesn't want him, he'll come back with his tail between his legs, and then, you know, he'll have to sign for less money and a smaller buyout, and they'll be ready to fire him next year. I'll tell you what.
Well, and that's a bad look too, because when you're committing to a program, you want that coach to be there for 4 years. And if he signs a contract, like if I'm a recruit, I'm thinking not only do I want to see him sign a contract extension, but I want to read the reports about the details, because if I see that the reports that we've been reading are true and that he signs a contract that makes him easy to fire in a year, I'm thinking, wait a second, what if I have to redshirt the first year and I never get to play for Jim Harbaugh? That's a problem.
Yeah, well, all of that's legit. I mean, if there's guys that have had their heart set on Michigan, and it's, you know, there's not everybody's just enamored, although most people are with the head coach. I mean, he's the one really that you're committing to. But, you know, there's other guys that really just do want to be part of a major program or whatever else, and you know, lifelong fans, scholastic, whatever it is. And so maybe that they'll end up signing. But I'll tell you what, if I was a guy like this J.J. McCarthy, who's this 5-star quarterback, he can go anywhere he wants in the country, I would just play the same tune as Harbaugh. I'd say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and wait till, you know, the smoke clears here to see what I want to do. No rush. I wouldn't put my name on any attachment and hit send into Michigan tomorrow, but that's just me. But
I agree.
You know, we'll see. I do expect drama tomorrow. You're right about that. I wouldn't want to be sitting there in front of the computer or the fax machine just waiting like.
Yeah, this is not the year to have signing day with the Stars. That's for certain for Michigan.
Well, that's the, you know, the one thing about signing with the Stars. Here's Jim Harbaugh, who came in and one of the big emphasis, like a lot of coaches, is how are they going to pull in, the great talent. And we all know what Jim Harbaugh did. He climbed trees. He had sleepovers. He, birthed calves. He took, the team abroad. He had Signing with the Stars, which was like the Oscars, all done to put on a show to get high school recruits and to bolster his class through recruiting. Now, here we are a couple hours from, signing day, and a recruit can say there's just total uncertainty. Hey, Jim, it really looks like that should have been the question that was posed to him yesterday. Hey, Jim, you said we should judge you by your actions. Well, these actions totally look like you're putting yourself out there for an NFL job, and you're putting yourself in front of Michigan. Why are you putting yourself in front of the university and the football program that you say you love? Your thoughts? And I don't want to hear. And hopefully they would keep my mic, because when he rolled out that, well, that's what we said. Bullshit. What you would say to him.
Yeah, that would be an opportunity for a follow-up. That's for certain. And I'll tell you this, you mentioned some of these recruits might be lifelong Michigan fans. If you look at the 24/7 rankings, Michigan has that 1 5-star J.J. McCarthy you were talking about, and 11 4-stars that are committed. If you look at those 12, only 2 are from the state of Michigan, which means that there's a higher likelihood of them being lifelong Michigan fans. In addition to that, the other 10 are not only not from Michigan, they're not from Big Ten country. So if they didn't grow up watching a heck of a lot of Michigan football, if they didn't grow up watching a heck of a lot of Big Ten football because they're from California or Florida or whatever, I would think that would make them more likely to hit the pause button or to accept an offer from those other places. Because when you're talking about 4 and 5 stars, not 3 stars, they've got other options likely from other Big Ten schools, if they're not from Big Ten country, from Pac-12, ACC, SEC, Big 12 schools. It's not like it's Michigan or Ball State if they're a 3-star recruit or something like that. They're going to have options, and if they've got a whole bunch of people in their ear whispering, hey, wouldn't it be nice to play close to home or something like that, they might just listen to that.
Yeah, maybe there's this part where Jim Harbaugh was the one that said that this should be the new rule. And I think it's going in place where you get the one-time transfer with no questions. So, maybe the guys can look at this and say, we can go to Michigan, but we can just hit the portal. Just, jump right in the portal.
Hit the portal 2 weeks after you sign.
Yeah, you'd like to have that option. First you want to go to a school, check it out, not, burn your, free pass, immediately. That's not, the best part about it. But, yeah, it'd just be interesting to see how it plays out. Like, these coaches, like, at this point, right now, I would never listen to any assistant coach that was telling me, I'm staying around. And I don't know how any kid who, has anybody that understands what's going on with Harbaugh. It's like, why doesn't he have a new contract? Why isn't he signing it? Like, all the opponents are, are calling up and, and telling the kid that. It's just going to be it's going to be interesting to see how many of these guys end up, sticking and staying.
Mm-hmm. And before we get to the Lions issue regarding Jim Harbaugh on Michigan not playing against Iowa, I've been in communication with a few Michigan fans. You're a Michigan fan. I know that you've been in communication with them as well. They're not at least the ones I've talked to, none of them are disappointed that they're not playing this game. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about whether it's serious or whether it's all in a joking manner about Michigan waving the white flag. And there's certainly a difference between those that are in the program and those that are fans and alums. But of the fans and alums that I've talked to, they're fine with Michigan not playing any more football this year.
Yeah, the season's been a complete disaster. The team's terrible, and there's not a whole lot to hang your hat on when it comes to the season that's just been so miserable. But did I want to see them play against Maryland? Yeah. Did I want to see them, even though they were going to, suffer a gigantic beatdown against Ohio State? I say it, and then I would have been sitting there in the first quarter like, why did I say that I wanted to see them play? I think I wanted just some of the guys to get some experience, that maybe that could have helped them in the future. But it's not like I'm over here like if the team was sitting around and, didn't have any losses and they canceled the last 3 seasons, last 3 games, be like, oh man, it's I'm not crying. I'm not crying that they're not playing, but I would rather have seen them play. The one thing that it comes down with the positive tests or the cases and everything else, I don't know. I think when you're behind closed doors and you can do whatever you want when it comes down to the numbers, I think you do what's in the best interest of your program. And other schools, they've canceled games, and
yep.
I understand. The one thing, like, you can say, but they're cowards. Well, I don't know if they're cowards. I mean, I could easily, how many ever, players are out, 30, 40, they say 50 would be unavailable for this game. I could easily, they have, their starting center got hurt. Their backup center is hit the portal, a week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So
now you're coming down to a third string center who's never taken a snap in a game, probably a true freshman. Maybe he's got COVID. Maybe, the 2 or 3 more offensive linemen, and you're talking about playing a true freshman quarterback. I don't know, like, could I see by looking at that and having an abundance of cases where you say, you know what, it's in our best interest not to go out there and embarrass ourselves, playing a quality football team where we know we're just going to get beat. I mean, there's one thing about, hey, let's be, there's a lot of tough guys out there talking about, I'd play a walk-on,
Well, I mean, I think the obvious comparison is Ohio State, because they had 23 players who did not play against Michigan State, and they won by 40. Like, that's where the tough man argument comes from. Hey, look how many players we didn't have. Look how we had third-string guys on the offensive line that played, and we won by 40. When it comes to anytime, anywhere, anybody, like, they lived it, and they won.
Michigan's not the Michigan and Ohio State program couldn't be any more, opposite.
Well, correct.
Yeah. So.
But I mean that's where the whole coward thing would come from, when you can juxtapose those two right there.
You just got to take it. Michigan wants to be Ohio State. I mean, that's what they used to be. That used to be the rivalry. Everything used to be like, hey, they wanted to be an elite program. They wanted to play for national championships, but they're a million miles away from that. So when you're that, you still stick your chest out, and you just got to take the heat. No, it's not professional. It's not fun. Listen to people call you a coward, and use the COVID test against you and act like you're calling in sick. Calling you out of the car.
I got these sick days I got to use by the end of the year, so let me just throw them in for the last 3 games of the year. Let me just throw.
You signed up for that. Like, if you're a team, people say, "Oh, it's not very nice." No, it's not very nice. College football fans are not very nice. I mean, this just did. Sports talk show fans and hosts are not very nice. Yeah. If we're looking for nice, then you've come to the wrong place.
Yeah. Now, the other issue that's hanging over Jim Harbaugh potentially is not just could he be going to the NFL, but could he be going to the Lions? Because, a week or 2 ago when we kind of brought it up in passing, it was just because the Lions had an opening and there was talk about Jim Harbaugh not having a contract. But if you looked at, like, for instance, the FanDuel Sportsbook odds of Harbaugh coming to the Lions, last week it was at plus 1,100, meaning he was not one of the favorites. Robert Saleh was the favorite. But on Saturday, that changed. Harbaugh became the co-favorite with 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh to become the next head coach of the same old Lions at plus 200. Plus 200. That's a massive shift. What does that shift mean?
Well, the shifts to me, like, Harbaugh's had these news conferences, like the 3 or 4 over the last week or so. And every time he's asked, he's all like, no, we're going to talk after the season, F signing day. What he might as well say is, look, I'm looking for an NFL job. If you've got one, come on down. I'll take it. We're blowing off signing day, and because Ward doesn't want to pay me the $10 million, and if you will, give me $20-30 million, I'll be your head coach. That's what's changed. Like, people are like, Jim doesn't have any. He doesn't need any. When you're sitting out there, your actions, there's really no other. If he was actually not really considering the NFL, like he said, then this is like the stupidest move of all time.
Yeah.
We know what's going on. We've seen it during bowl games and everything when these coaches are all like, no, I'm going to coach my team. Everybody's like, okay. I mean, it's a song and dance that we do. Everybody knows exactly what's going on. So the people out there in Vegas, when he's like, no, we're blowing off signing day and we're just going to talk after the season, they're like, get the odds down.
Well, I think it's one of two things. It's number one, it could be that Jim Harbaugh really wants to go to the NFL, and perhaps the experts in Vegas that set the lines are aware of his agent speaking to NFL teams, putting feelers out there, and he wants to go, perhaps reading the tea leaves that you're talking about, knowing that he wants to go. But the other option is, and the other reason why Vegas lines move, is based on the betting trends. So if they see that a bunch of money is coming in on Jim Harbaugh to coach the Lions, perhaps from upset Michigan fans that want him out, or Michigan or Lions fans who are also Michigan fans, and the first name they can think of is Jim Harbaugh, they say, hey, let's just put $50, let's just put $100 on Harbaugh coming to the Lions. It's plus 1,100. That's not too bad. Well, then Vegas wants to make money, so they're going to lessen the odds so that if Harbaugh gets the job, they don't lose too much. That's the other option. And obviously it's impossible to know, unless you talk to a sportsbook owner, if there's a heck of a lot of money coming in on Jim Harbaugh to the Lions. But given that he coaches in the state of Michigan right now, and the Lions are in the state of Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised if that's at least part of the reason why we've seen that big shift.
I'm with you. You want some feedback?
Yes, I do.
DJ says you're giving Penn State way too much credit for the win. Paul says if Stafford, okay, we've got Stafford, Les Miles. Here's somebody saying Boise State to the Big Ten. Good
Boise
fit.
State. If this was 15 years ago, circa Kellen Moore and Titus Young before he started punching out teammates, then that would make more sense if you were going to talk about them going to the Pac-12. But Boise State now, they're nothing.
Yeah, they're in Idaho. I don't know where that comes from. Les Miles, speaking of 10 years ago, that would have been a good fit too.
Yeah.
The Mad Hatter, not so much now, although, that was the last time that Kirk Herbstreit went out there and really showed his Buckeye colors when he sabotaged that coaching search. Keith says, what's up, man? Harbaugh's not going to the Lions. That's too funny. Unless he's the GM too, why would he take the Lions job? I could see him coaching another NFL team that has a brighter outlook. No other team that I know has canceled 3 games in a row, so you can't compare Michigan to any other team in that regard. Of all the institutions you would think could get a COVID outbreak under control quick, wouldn't Michigan be at the top of the list?
Yeah, that has confused me a little bit, because they have an epidemiologist that's in control of this. For the first 6 games of the year, they didn't have any coronavirus issues. And then all of a sudden, when you hear about, a school having to pause for a week and skip a game, or Wisconsin having to skip 2, Michigan is the first, not just the Big Ten, but in the country that I can remember, skipping 3 in a row, and not because of a combination of them skipping games and their opponent having an outbreak. All 3 are due to Michigan having an outbreak.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, the weekend of the Penn State game was, I think it could be a combination. Here would be my guess is that, once the season starts going south, the guys that, weren't hanging around their girlfriends or weren't hanging around the parties, and once you go 2-4, and it's like, the hell with this season, let's go hang out with somebody.
I'm sick.
Yeah, all it takes
I got
is
a
one
fever.
dude. All it takes is one person, and then
Can't
you go into
taste
the weight
the
room,
Gatorade.
and that can, spread it like wildfire, apparently, So, as far as any of the other schools and why they can't do it, I don't know. Am I sitting over here and saying there's absolutely no way that Michigan fudged their numbers to? No, I think that there's a possibility that they looked at the injuries and the COVID cases, and they looked at their depth chart and said, look, it's in our best interest not to play this game. Now, do I think that they did that against Maryland? No. Do I think it's more possible against Ohio State? I really do. But as much as you're saying, oh, it's a guarantee, I can't guarantee it either way. But you know what? Ohio State, they could have played a game, but they thought it was in their best interest not to play against Illinois. Wisconsin at the beginning of the season, after they played one game, it was in their best interest not to play the next 2 weeks because they wanted to stay in the race. And Michigan, like I said, without looking at the depth chart, people are calling them cowards. And now if we looked at the depth chart and it really didn't have a factor in there and it was just injured players, and then I don't know, so I think if you're a Michigan fan, you're like, oh my God, now you're, calling them out for calling in sick. How
Michigan
dare you?
fans, for the most part, from what I understand, aren't all that concerned about the reasoning. They're just saying, hey, we're not playing, cool with me, I'll watch something else.
Yeah, you know what? It felt because it was unprofessional when Kirk Herbstreit did it. insinuation that you were doing that, but you're doing what you think is in best interest, the best interest of your program. It might not be cowardly. It might not be you're ducking them. It might be really looking at your depth chart and saying, you know what, are we going to go take a 60-point beating?
I just don't think that Michigan fans right now care about the reasoning.
No, I don't think Michigan fans care either. I'm telling you, like even the diehards and the Jim Harbaugh looking at the depth chart over there. The one thing I heard over and over again from Michigan defenders is, you call Jim Harbaugh whatever you want, but don't call him competitive. It's like, I don't know. Here's a guy that's running for cover and that loved recruits and signing day and would have a sleepover with a 17-year-old. Now he's like, F signing day, I'm going to go out there and
he hasn't had any antics in like the last couple of years.
Yeah, but my point is, don't tell me that Jim Harbaugh would never beg out of a game because looking at his depth chart when there's a lot of things that are in his best interest to do exactly that. So I don't know. And you know what? No, it's not good form to insinuate that people are hiding behind COVID, or you look at a player out there and you say he's hurt and he's not, or you're the other way around. I do it. 2 weeks ago, I was talking about Kenny Galladay and saying maybe he had Calvin Johnson disease, like saying, I think I'll just sit the rest of the year out. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm just making
and now
up.
Stafford's not playing, so, man, this hip is really bothering me.
Yeah, I'm just making all that up. You know, that's I'm not if you want to play it like, hey, let's be all professional and let's not, walk over the line or anything. Like, everybody walks over the line, and
it's called being facetious.
Well, actually, it's just called
sometimes.
Modern sports.
Yeah.
Like, that's everybody. Just call it whatever you want, man. That guy looks like he's drunk. Do whatever you want. Say somebody's got a drinking problem. Say they're on drugs. Say they're sleeping with somebody else. Like sending Brett Favre pictures to co-ed. Say whatever you want. Like, it's all good now. It's that's. I'm not complaining about it. Look, that's what we do. If your average fan sitting there watching it, when they heard Herb Street, that's Michigan now. They were ducking everybody. It really speaks to just the pitiful situation that they're in with their football program. So, I mean, if you're really going to be honest, I mean, it's not really about, it's about the sad state of affairs with the program.
All right, let's turn the page to the second chapter, and that takes us to a little bit of MSU football.
Well, MSU was up 21-10 at the half against Penn State this last Saturday, or they were up 35.5-10 if you factored in the 14.5 points that I took, taking Michigan State, feeling pretty good about myself, saying, hey, you know what? I like this Peyton Thorne. I like the 14.5 points. I'm sitting there at the halftime. I went for a walk. The rain let up, and I'm like, man, 35.5-10. I'm cashing this ticket, but, they end up losing 39-38.5 as they don't do anything except have a measly field goal in the second half. And then the big play was your boy, Jahan Dotson, which was a thrilling punt return, weaving in and out of players that would have had the stadium rocking. His punt returns. What it said to me, man, that even without the thousands of fans there, and what it would have been like if you had actually had that punt return. Punt returns are the most thrilling thing in football. You don't see them very frequently, but the game turned and it was essentially over there. Although State had a million chances to come down and get something going, but man, just a tough loss. I know I'm supposed to be asking you a question, but what did you think of the Michigan State Penn State game?
Well, I mean, in the second quarter, it was exactly what what Michigan State fans were hoping for out of Peyton Thorne. They were hoping to see somebody that would give them optimism for the future at the quarterback position after Rocky Lombardi's up and down year, but mostly down outside of the Michigan game and some of the Northwestern game. They're hoping that Peyton Thorne, a redshirt freshman, could give them optimism that the quarterback situation would not have to be handled by a graduate transfer or some other transfer or some true freshman quarterback. And I think if all they were looking for was a glimmer of hope, then they got that, because Thorne had over 200 yards passing in the first half. He had 3 touchdowns in that second quarter. They weren't just dink and dunk and let the receiver do the rest. He was airing it out down the field. There was some weak coverage on the first touchdown that he threw, but on that second touchdown, what was his name, Trevon Moore, whatever it was, he jumped up and made a catch into triple coverage. And in order to make a catch in triple coverage, there has to be a very accurate pass. So they got what they wanted out of Peyton Thorne in terms of getting a glimmer of hope. But, of course, it was not able to be transferred into the second half. That was it. Penn State made some adjustments. They started to send more than just 4. They were sending 6 at a time, and Peyton Thorne couldn't deal with that. And that's how the Michigan State offense was stalled. I continue to be baffled by how teams can't stop Penn State's offense. That they have one good receiver in Jahan Dotson. They don't have a dynamic running back, even though Kevon Lee, a true freshman, has looked stronger as the year's gone along. Probably helps that they're playing 3 weak opponents in Michigan, Rutgers, and Michigan State to finish the season. Whenever Will Levis comes into the game, for the most part, he always runs and always runs up the gut. They lost their best tight end for the season. They never air it out down the field ever. Whenever they hand the ball off, it's to a running back up the middle. I mean, check out this stat. Only 6 players on Penn State have a rushing attempt this year. They are the quarterbacks, Clifford and Levis, and Kane, Ford, Lee, and Keziah Holmes, the running backs. That means they've never had an end around. They've never had a reverse to a wide receiver, because if they did that, that would force them to run outside the tackles. Despite how boring and easy the offense appears to be on paper to defend, they were able to put up 39 points, 32 points against Mel Tucker, a quote-unquote defensive genius, and that Michigan State defense. It's been puzzling to me down the stretch that having seen it all year, even against bad teams, that it can't be stopped. So I think that's something that should concern Michigan State fans. That should concern them going into their game against Maryland, particularly with Antoine Simmons saying that he's done with Michigan State football to prepare for the NFL. But,
who's that?
Antoine.
That's not Joe Milton.
That's
Joe Milton impersonation.
That's right. I don't know who that guy is. But I think that a lot of Michigan State fans, when it comes to this game against Maryland, some of them are probably going to be half interested. Some are going to see what Peyton Thorne can do. I think it makes sense to see what the team is going to do against perhaps an equally talented team, maybe a little bit less talented team going into next year. But, I think it was a frustrating and disappointing finish to the season, or to the regular season, that second half against Penn State.
Yeah, like some of those games, they look good against Michigan, and other games are just getting, they played well against Northwestern. Other games they just get throttled. So it's weird. They look great in the second quarter, and then cough it up in the second half. So man, Jekyll and Hyde from quarter to quarter, game to game. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, if I'm a Michigan State fan, like they've already exceeded expectations this year. Getting another game in, getting to check Thorne out. Maybe he could put 2 or 3 quarters of good football together. I mean, he looked great. I mean, some of those throws that he made, that one touchdown pass, showed the arm. I mean, hit the guy right in stride, has chemistry with Naylor. I mean, a lot of things to like there if you're a Spartan fan, except that second half. And, of course, if you were like me and took the 14.5, you were really crying at the end of that one.
Yeah, that was tough if you took the Spartans and the points. But I'll say this. We were just talking about Jim Harbaugh and the mess that he's created potentially with National Signing Day. If you're Michigan State and you're a Michigan State fan, you might be thinking to yourself, we beat Michigan head-to-head. We beat Northwestern head-to-head. If we could finish off with a win against Penn State, then perhaps we might be a little bit more enticing to one of those recruits that wants to flip from Michigan to go somewhere else. Now, it hurts, as I mentioned, that only 2 of those top 12 recruits are from the state of Michigan, but maybe that could get you having a strong finish, beating Northwestern and Penn State in your final and 2 of your final 3 games, to say, hey, this is the place to be. But then to get trucked by 40 against the JV team, against the Deep South Buckeyes, and then lose the second half. I think it was 29-3 to Penn State. I think that curbs some of the momentum that they would have had going into signing day that Michigan was helping to potentially fuel.
I would agree with that, but the other thing, like sometimes the best thing you have to offer and what the guys are looking for is playing time. If you say, hey, we've got it here. Look, we just need somebody to come in and
Yeah, Mel Tucker
run.
said, hey, we're encouraging guys to go to the transfer portal. Get out of here. We don't want you. We're letting you know.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Let's see, nothing on Michigan State. So let's get to chapter 3.
All right, we shall turn the page to the third chapter. And that takes us to the same old Lions. And on the same old Lions Sunday, this past Sunday, they played the Green Bay Packers. And they lost to drop to 5-8 on the season. As I said last week, they're done winning football games for the season. And if that happens, then my preseason prediction of 5-11 will be correct. And one thing we know about the Lions is while they are a bad football team, they're a really bad football team when Stafford doesn't play. Last year they were 0-8 without him, and the odds of him playing this Sunday against the Titans are not good because he got hit pretty hard on, I think it was the second to last drive of the game against the Packers. And according to ESPN, and by the way, he stayed in for one more play and then did not return. Chase Daniel entered. But ESPN reports that Stafford suffered a rib cartilage injury, and they report that the Lions are not overly optimistic that he will play against the Titans. We know that Stafford's a very tough player, but Dennis, what does this mean for the Lions short-term and potentially long-term about Stafford getting injured at the end of that Packers game?
If it was up to Stafford, he would be playing. Remember 2 years ago when he had a broken back and they were out of the playoffs, he went out there and played. So, what you got to do if you're Stafford, you got to take his helmet away and not give it back to him. He can't go out there and play anymore. It's in his best interest, even if you're in your own organization's best interest, not to have him play anymore. So, take it and put him on the sideline. The one thing about next year, the new GM and a new head coach, do I think that the Lions will be looking for another quarterback? I do, but you know what? Stafford, when you owe him $20 million, if you're getting rid of him, I think using him as a bridge quarterback is likely the direction that they will go. I mean, if just dealing him now, if you're going to get a boatload of picks, maybe you just take the $20 million cap hit. That's an enormous cap hit to take. Maybe that they would end up doing that. Maybe that the next GM and coach are thinking that, they really got to bottom out or something like that. But my guess is that he would be a bridge quarterback, that they would draft somebody and that, Stafford would show him the ropes and that would be his final season next year. Now, that's how I see it.
See, I don't understand the aversion to big cap hits, $20 million, $30 million cap hits, if you don't think the team is destined to compete for a playoff spot. If you're taking over a complete rebuild, I think it would behoove you, it would be in your best interest to take a guy and ship him out and eat a cap hit, because that would improve your draft positioning. If you think the quarterback is a big...
I don't think unless you're, walking into the Jets or something, like even the Lions, I know you thought they were going to suck, and they ultimately did. But when you have a team with Matt Stafford on it, and this team could have been in that range of 7-9 and 9-7, and I think the next GM will think the same thing. Like, we've got a quarterback. Instead of taking a big hit, unless there's a first and second round draft pick that's sitting out there, like the Bengals got for Carson Palmer back when he was 32, 33 years old. It could happen. But I'm just telling you what I think might get.
If you need a franchise quarterback after Stafford leaves, then, obviously you could draft what the fourth or fifth best quarterback, depending on what their draft position is going to be this year, given that the top 2 picks are going to be draft picks and there's so many other teams that are currently ahead of the Lions that need quarterbacks. You could draft the fourth or the fifth best quarterback this year, or you could take a $20 million cap hit and get rid of your current quarterback, which would really decimate an already bad football team and put yourself in position for a guaranteed top 3 pick and guaranteed first or second best quarterback in the 2022 draft. I would think that would make more sense and not be concerned about, well, what are we going to look like for the 2021 season? You're going to suck, so you might as well make sure that you have a quarterback for the future.
There's probably a lot of people that think like you, but I don't think that GMs in the NFL think like that. Unless
they don't, because they never do that.
Well, because I think that they feel like 75% of the teams, and the Lions actually are, like, I know you argue it, like they're with Matt Stafford, they have generally been in that 75-80% range where they're going to finish from 7-5 or 7-9 to 9-7. And if you're making the right picks and you hire the right coach, and you can make the playoffs. I mean, that's the way these GMs think. I don't think they go in now. You go in and immediately a quarterback gets hurt, you get a rash of injuries. Do I think then that they're playing the tank game? I think that happens, but there's no guaranteed deals in the NFL. You get the guaranteed money, but these guys, they have been mostly. This is a league that has mostly been able to avoid teams outright tanking.
Well, I understand that with Matt Stafford, they could potentially go 7-9 or 9-7 if they have a very good head coach and the new GM makes some shrewd moves. They could get to 9-7 in 1 year. I'm not doubting that. But if Matt Stafford is only going to be your quarterback for one more year, given his age, given his injury issues, given the fact that he's an average player, then what's your plan for 2022? Because if you finish with an 8-8 or 9-7 record, then you're going to be picking like 18 in the draft. You'd either have to move way up or get very fortunate by picking somebody there or later in the draft, or you'd have to be fortunate with your second-year quarterback coming in like Patrick Mahomes did, or Lamar Jackson did, and just taking over after your incumbent quarterback leaves. That can work, and in those two situations, it has worked to the tune of those two quarterbacks becoming MVPs on their rookie deals. But more often, you see teams leading or guys leading their teams to the playoffs with quarterbacks that were drafted higher than that, and franchise quarterbacks drafted higher than that. And I think that you're taking a bigger risk if you just want to stick with Stafford and go with a lower rated quarterback. There's no guarantee either way.
Sideshow Raj on the live chat on YouTube says, giving Chase Daniel $4.5 million for 3 years and having 0% chance of winning with him going into a game is very #SOL. Paul on Facebook indicates that Speilman drafts a linebacker in 2021 in the second round. Prediction. Yeah, he's not going to have anything to do with the draft. Like you said, he's just in there to, be an advisor. I don't think he's personnel.
Yeah, let's get to Speilman and Sanders, because the other big news today about the Lions was about their head coach and GM search. And I'm going to give you some credit for this, because it was you a couple of weeks ago who said the Lions need to form a committee that has former Lions on it so that Rod Wood and Sheila Ford Hamp won't be just sitting around making decisions. And that's what they did, because they hired Chris Speilman to a permanent job today, not just a temporary job, but a permanent job to be the assistant to Rod Wood. And he's going to be actively involved in the hiring process of the next coach and general manager. And they also put together a 3-person advisory board to help Speilman select the next GM and coach. These 3 aren't going to be sitting in on meetings, but those 3 are former general manager Rod Graves, former Michigan State athletic director Mark Hollis, and former Lions running back Barry Sanders. Is this going to guarantee a Super Bowl in the next 5 years?
No, it's not going to guarantee a Super Bowl. I should point out, I didn't check the IP address or something, but 3 weeks ago there was somebody from Rod from Allen Park saying interesting suggestion on the live chat. So, maybe he was taking a look at that. You know what? Having an outsider come in and, like Chris Speilman's not an outsider. He does love the Lions, and he's been around the game, and it's really a perfect hire here for the Lions. And, he's, Sheila and Rod ultimately, I guess, but he's going to be in on those interviews. Ultimately, Chris Speilman is going to be like, that's the one. And
he's not going to get overruled.
Idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. Today's a really weird day. Like from the first time I'd ever seen Rod Wood, I'm like, oh, they're hiring an accountant. This is totally cronyism. And then Martha Ford put him out there when they didn't have a GM, and he was like speaking for the organization. It was such a disaster. So he got off on the wrong foot with me, and then it was another season ticket holder thing where he was talking about we are going to raise tickets next year, but you know what? We're going to raise them the following year too. It's like, wow, man, this guy's real savvy.
He didn't commit to having good cheerleaders. That was the one thing that I remember. He said they're going to have cheerleaders, but he said not above and beyond. So at least from my perspective, I was thinking, so they're just going to have some ugly cheerleaders, and maybe they're going to have pom-poms, maybe the jerseys are going to match, maybe they're not. It turns out that some of them are attractive, but, I mean, just comments like that, telling the fans, we haven't had cheerleaders from it forever, and they might be ugly.
Yeah, I just always wanted to get him out of the way of the camera or the radio. I just didn't want to hear anything he had to say. But you know what? Today I was reading his quotes, and you know, it was the first time I was like, "Wow, Rod Wood seems like a professional, and you know, seems like he knows what he's doing." I don't know. It was very, very strange. It kind of fit into 2020. All of a sudden, I'm like, "Hey, Rod Wood's a professional." It's like I never said that before. So I don't know. Maybe he really has learned on the job here. But these were, they're no-brainers, but. The Lions have been tripping over themselves with no-brainer stuff for, 100 years. So they've made some right moves here. It guarantees nothing. The one thing you got to remember is, when you look at the average turnover of head coaches and GMs with these new franchises, a quarter of them end up, staying past their first contract. Most of these guys, 75% of them all, end up getting canned. So you're already up against it. And then when you're coming in and you're operating from being the worst organization in all of sports, just look at it, the turnover rate there. But you know what? You're going into another cycle where you feel like you're giving somebody that cares deeply about the Lions, the city, and he's got the exact kind of resume that you want. You feel like maybe they got a good I don't know about a good chance. They got a chance.
Yeah, look, they're still the same old Lions until proven otherwise. I'm going to assume it's going to fail. The Lions, every 2 to 5 years, start rebuilding once again, whether it's with a new quarterback, a new coach, a new general manager, or all of that. So I assume in the next 2 to 5 years, it's going to happen again. But this is a great move. I mean, when you talk about bringing in not just a football guy, but a football guy with a full-time position. A lot of folks have been saying for years, we need a football guy in there, not just Rod Wood, the accountant. So you got Chris Speilman, who's going to be Rod Wood's assistant, and I would assume handling more of the football issues than Wood. That's a big positive. You don't have Rod Wood saying, based on my accounting experience, we need to hire this head coach, or we should take this guy in the third round. Also, you look at the fact that Speilman and, of course, Barry Sanders have a tremendous amount of credibility in the organization. When you bring up those two names, they give Lions fans a warm, fuzzy feeling because those are the glory days, because they led the Detroit Lions to one playoff win and one division championship, their only playoff win and only division championship since 1957. If you were born, if you're 25 years old, meaning you were born after those two historic events, you've heard your father, you've heard your uncle, your grandparents talk about the great Barry Sanders and Chris Speilman, and now they're bringing them back, and you say, wow, maybe I can feel what it's like to have a successful Lions franchise when they occasionally win a playoff game. So that I think is a huge positive too.
Yeah, they're my favorite two players in Lions history.
There you go.
I love Speilman as a player. Of course, everybody loved Barry. If there's one thing, though, about Speilman, I like him as a college football analyst. I like him as a pro analyst. But when he did the Lions preseason game, when you're bringing in a preseason analyst that they're going to play it up for the home team. That's part of what they do. Yeah. If you're looking for somebody to be like, super critical or even
the Lions own the rights. So that's where you're going to get that.
It is. It's a real slap fest. But the one thing about it is some of the stuff that he had to say about Stafford. I mean, he's just like he just thinks Stafford's like the greatest quarterback of all time. Now, you know what? There's a lot of Lion fans that are like, yeah, well, he is the greatest of all time. He is that good.
Chris Speilman said it.
Yeah, Speilman said it. He's right. I think he went even for a preseason broadcast. I think that he used to go overboard on Stafford, talking about how great he was, but. Is that going to poison the well for a potential GM that he's seeing? If the next guy's coming in, it's like, hey, man, this guy, he throws too many picks. Let's get him out of here. Is Chris going to be like, no, I don't like him. I don't know. But, so nobody's perfect on that he homered it up a little bit too much with Stafford in the preseason.
Well, the
You know
fact
what?
that he is a lifelong Lion for the most part, and he loves the organization, means that he's going to want to hire somebody who's going to do the best for the Lions, as opposed to being like Ernie Accorsi saying, hey, this is a guy I've known for a long time. I've wanted him to get a shot somewhere. You hired me, so I want him to get a shot on your team.
All right, well, we're running out of time here, and I got a lot of things I want to say about the Pistons and the Tigers. So Raj just says, take Zach Wilson in the first round and let him sit while Stafford honors the last year of his contract. And then he says the Lions should give Brian Griese an interview for that GM position. I like the Zach Wilson. You know, Griese as a GM from the broadcast booth, and I'm not ready for that, you know, right now. Are you ready to get to the fourth chapter?
Let's turn the page to the fourth chapter.
Oh, and you know, if Chapman's going to cry in this chapter because his boy Jello was not given a chance by this raggedy ass organization, according to Jello's old man. Pistons did have a pair of preseason games against the Knicks. We're looking for your takeaways.
Well, in terms of LiAngelo Ball, this was this was very disappointing. I mean, there was a lot of, at least for an undrafted free agent signing, there was a lot of hype about this guy, LiAngelo Ball, from the fan base. I was communicating with a lot of folks. I put up a couple of polls on Twitter after each of the games saying, hey, did LiAngelo Ball get screwed by not playing? And Pistons fans were saying, yes, that was the case. Additionally, I don't know if you saw this driving around Dexter, but around Metro Detroit, there were billboards, and I saw them driving around when I was Ubering, and they, as you can see, it says, Jello, Detroit loves you. And, you know, this is in addition to the billboards that I would see driving around town saying, the Pistons welcome Killian Hayes, or the Pistons welcome Sadiq Bey. And so when I saw those around Metro Detroit, I was thinking, oh, wow, the Pistons must be really interested in LiAngelo Ball because they're putting up billboards. What I didn't realize was that the design of the billboards for LiAngelo Ball were different than the ones for the Pistons draft picks, and that the LiAngelo Ball billboards were not put up by the Pistons. And of course, that would look pretty stupid if they would cut him afterwards. But I was disappointed. I wanted to see him play. It was interesting to see that after the second preseason game that he didn't play in, he was listed as DNP right ankle sprain. Now, LeVar said last week that LiAngelo's ankle issues were behind him, and he said surgery. Perhaps that's the biggest reason why he got cut, because his ankles weren't good enough to allow him to play. If he can get to 100%, maybe he'll sign with another team. But in the meantime, you got LeVar Ball speaking to Bleacher Report, and I've got an article from the New York Post where he dissed the Detroit Pistons. He called them raggedy as hell. He said, I definitely have thoughts on that. The people in Detroit are great. I love the fans, but the franchise over there is raggedy as hell. They don't know a good player. I was giving them a lottery pick for free. He has the skills to play and the notoriety to bring everybody to the game. So he was very bitter about this. I think Pistons fans aren't extremely bitter about it, but they're a little bit disappointed to see that he's gone, and it's the end of an era.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, I know he gets 7 figures for his Instagram account. You know, maybe that's, a million girls or something. I don't know. Or just maybe the younger generation loves Jello. I mean, you love him. And it's hard for me to comment. Like, I remember watching, 1 minute of some, AAU game where he's, jacking up shots from half court and everything. I was like, this guy's a ball hog. And, whatever. And I know that he almost got thrown in jail, or did, in China, for stealing some sunglasses. I mean, that's all I know about him. I was looking forward. I was watching that first preseason game last Friday like it was like the NBA Finals, glued to it. Actually, I watched both of the first 2 games, so I was looking forward to seeing him, at least seeing what he looked like in the. I think what you're saying about his ankles or whatever else, my guess is that, they, I know that within an hour, if we ran full, Chapman, I could, tell you all about your game and, what you had, what made you tick and everything else. And so, they had him for a little while in there, and maybe they just thought, this guy's a ball hog. Let's get him out of here. I don't know what it was, but I do know that they have a pair of 19-year-olds that were first-round picks for the last 2 years. And Sekou, Sekou, sometimes I look at him and I think, man, is he out of shape? He's got that baby fat. He's got that, like, Paul Pierce build. And, Paul Pierce ended up, going to be a Hall of Famer. He was a great player. He just never did tone up. It looks like Sekou could – lose some of that baby fat. And then Killian Hayes, man, what I didn't realize, I should have, like, if Derrick Rose stays healthy and Killian Hayes does, that's the two guys that are going to take the bulk. I know they have Lee that they drafted out of Vanderbilt too, but these are the guys that are going to have the bulk of the minutes at point guard. I love watching Derrick Rose play, and I love watching Killian Hayes as a point guard project or, the future. Develop, and so just having those two guys out there is going to be interesting to me. So that's what I took away from the first two games.
Yeah, unfortunately, YouTube TV still does not have their deal done with Sinclair, which owns Fox Sports Detroit, and the only two networks, there are only two cable providers that you can use to watch Fox Sports Detroit on are Xfinity and DirecTV. So I was not able to watch the game. If you have Hulu, you can't watch it, even though Hulu has live sports. YouTube TV, all the other streaming services don't have it. But I was able to listen to the first two games. And the two things that stood out to me, listening and looking at the box scores, are number one, Sekou really stepped up in that second game with 23 points in 18 minutes, 8 of 11. So that's what you're looking for. I told you after that draft week, I was wondering, like, they got Grant. They still have Griffin. They have two front court first round picks. Is Sekou going to play? And apparently he was ready to play in that preseason game on Sunday. And then Killian Hayes, obviously he's new to the country, new to the team, didn't have the opportunity to play in the summer league. But 4 of 19 is 4 of 19. I can understand if you're struggling and you're 6 of 19. But 4 of 19 is atrocious. And I think he was 1 of 9 from three-point land. Yeah, you have to figure that's going to get better, but And he wasn't listed as a shooter. He's not a knockdown shooter, but 4-19 is terrible.
No, he didn't look super athletic. He got ripped a couple times, but, he looks like he got a pretty live dribble, pretty good balance, and good court awareness. But it's going to be something. Point guards take a long time to develop, so can't make any, huge proclamations after two games. I think, the other thing is if Grant sucked in these two games, it doesn't mean he's going to be a bust as a pick or anything or a free agent pickup. But they've got Blake. They don't have any offense, man. They are really going to struggle to score.
They've turned it over, I think it was 41 times in the first two games. I think that a lot of that could come with the fact that there's only 4 or 5 players that are leftovers from the last team, and so many players are young. But, that's another thing. 41 turnovers is 41 turnovers.
Maybe LeVar was right. Maybe they are a raggedy-ass team.
There you go. All right,
okay.
Let's get to the major wager. Give us a recap of what you bet on last week, how that turned out, and what you're looking at for tonight or this week.
Well, I love the Cards over the Giants, and they blew them out. And I love the Colts over the Raiders, and likewise. So 2 winners for me. If you were listening last week, I'm going to go right back to the Cards. 6.5 points against the Eagles. I know Jalen Hurts had all that success, but I think the Cardinals will take away the run and make him throw the ball, which is actually what the Saints should have done, and they just couldn't do it. But I think Murray's back and healthy. He was for 3 weeks, or he wasn't really running the ball, but he was off the injured list this past week, and you saw what he was able to do against the Giants. I think this is easy money against the Eagles. I'll take the Cards to blow them out, and I'll put 2 on it, 200.
Yeah, Thursday I decided to take the opposite of you. I took the Giants plus the 3 points. They were terrible defensively. They were terrible offensively. Arizona won and blew them out. So
bad combo.
It was a bad combo. It was a bad week for me. Texas State is a 10.5 point favorite over Texas A&M Corpus Christi tonight. Texas State is 3-3. Texas A&M Corpus Christi is 0-5. Texas State, I believe, has already won 2 home games. Corpus Christi has not won on the road. Give me Texas State minus the 10.5 to cover against Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. All right, now let's turn the page to the fifth chapter, and that takes us to the Tigers. Now, typically we'd be talking about the Tigers a lot right now because of the winter meetings, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, that has been shelved. And instead we have to go with reports and interviews and things like that are going on. AJ Hinch, the new manager of the Tigers, recently spoke with MLB Network Radio about the Tigers roster. And when it came to the Tigers starting rotation, he had some interesting comments to make. And I can put up a couple of tweets from Jason Beck about that. Here's the first one. And it says, Tigers manager AJ Hinch told MLB Network Radio that the offseason priority is to, quote, enhance the pitching staff, adding a starter or two alongside Boyd, Fulmer, Turnbull. If we're going to do this right in Detroit, we have to get the pitching right. Additionally, he spoke about the lineup and said that he wanted to add veteran hitters alongside Castro, meaning Willie Castro, and Jeimer Candelario. He said, quote, now the market has to produce that. The players have to want to come to Detroit. It has to fit in our budget. We're being patient, but we're also being opportunistic when the time comes. Dennis, when you look at that first comment in particular, I think it is very fascinating that he omitted Mize and Skubal and said that they were building around Turnbull, Fulmer, and Boyd. What did you think about those two comments, particularly the one about the starting pitching staff?
Yeah, like I think that's Hinch doing a little coaching, before he gets to see those guys, leaving them off there like that, seeing if he could push them a little bit. I thought the other thing that was good is that he wasn't promising Nico Goodrum like any shortstop job and making it sound like he was going to be an everyday player. So I think he said that he was a super sub kind of guy, which is where he should be, even though Nico got a little ticked off about that last year. But I think he's probably, just trying to light a fire under the rookies.
That might be the case, but I like the fact, I like the fact that he didn't include them in that group because they were terrible last year. Like they were brought up as top 100 prospects. You had Mize, who was a top 10 prospect, and neither one of these guys could locate. The catcher would line up here, the ball goes over there. The catcher would line up here, the ball goes in the dirt. That Mize spike curve or knuckle curve that we were hearing about, or not spike curve, split finger we were hearing about, it was throwing grounders to the catcher left and right. So, I was glad that he didn't have Skubal and Mize guaranteed to have rotation spots. One thing I was concerned about is why the heck is he putting Fulmer and Boyd in the same group as Turnbull? Because Turnbull looked like an average major league starting pitcher. He was the best starter for the Tigers last year. I was telling you and everybody else before the season started, Matt Boyd is a hashtag bum, and he was worse than I thought he was going to be. And Fulmer was limited to 3 innings per start, and most of the time he couldn't even get through 3 innings because he was terrible. I think it makes sense to say, if you're AJ Hinch, we got to get some guys that can give us some innings because, maybe half of what I'm saying is to try to motivate Skubal and Mize, but the other half is this rotation is trash. I need some guys that can give me 5 innings at a time, 6 innings at a time without giving up 6 runs.
Yeah, I think the thing with Fulmer, they were bringing along and babying him last year. So, they're expecting a lot more from him, obviously, when they just had him in the openers and coming off the injury. So, he's a veteran, and the same thing with Boyd. That's why I went with the idea that they're going to make the youngsters earn it there. But, I think that's what they're looking for. I didn't expect them to come out and saying that, we got an open checkbook. We're going to go out there and compete with the Mets for all these guys. We're going to make a run at Springer and anybody else. Mm-hmm. We'll be signing Trevor Bauer.
He said they have a budget.
Yeah, that's good. Like, I expect them to be 500 this year and, have some ups and downs.
I do not expect them to be 500. Not with this pitching staff. And he mentioned the 2 guys in the lineup, Willie Castro and Jeimer Candelario. Other than that, what is he looking at in terms of the lineup? He's got Miggy, who's a singles hitter who showed a little more power late in the year. Jones is okay at the plate when he's healthy, but he's never healthy. The other outfielders are terrible. Nico Goodrum, is he going to be your starting second baseman? Are they going to bring back Scope? Who knows? I assume that they'll be a little bit better because they'll have a better manager in Hinch, but there's no way they'll be 500.
Okay. Well, you also took the Giants when I told you that the Cardinals were going to roll them. So you've been wrong before.
Yes.
All right, chap. That's going to do it. I thought you were going to slide something else in there and say, wait a second.
No. Unless you have some feedback.
McKenna says Hinch is making him earn it. I agree with you. All right. Coming up on Thursday's show, what will it look like for the Lions as we get our predictions in on their big tilt with Tennessee? We'll have that. We'll look at some of the other NFL games as well. That will be on Thursday's show on the Fifth Chapter. Thanks for watching. Good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.